We still don't know when the RTA's sleek new ferries will be ready for passengers, but today we found workers on the two boats fixing problems discovered during a failed inspection earlier this month. We're also learning that the transportation official in charge of the ferry operation has been replaced. Paul Murphy first reported on the ferry problems a couple of weeks ago. He joins us now with more on the new developments since then. Good evening, Paul.
Good evening, Tom. The new ferries would replace the aging and unreliable ferries now in use here at the Canal Street Ferry Landing. And that failed inspection identified a long list of issues, a punch list, if you will, of things that need to be addressed before the new ferries can be pressed into service. The RTA says it could take weeks, maybe months to complete the job. Riders hope it doesn't take another year. $10 million worth of new ferry boats remain docked on the Mississippi in Algiers. Tuesday, we spotted workers on the boats. They are finally fixing problems now keeping passengers from using the ferries. The boats arrived in New Orleans more than a year ago. It's a sore subject for Skip Gallagher, one of a handful of riders seeking answers from the RTA.
Is there some update on the ferries, the new ferries?
RTA attorney Sundiata Haley told Gallagher Metal Shark, the company that built the boats, is now addressing deficiencies on the ferries.
We're hopeful that those deficiencies can be addressed within the next day or two.
But much work still needs to be done to make the ferries seaworthy. Inspections outlined in a June 3rd report by an RTA consultant spelled out a long punch list. It identified problems with rescue equipment and fuel tanks. Metal Shark must also install washers where different types of metal touch on the boat. That can cause corrosion.
And that can very quickly erode the aluminum structure of the boat.
RTA Board Chairman Flozell Daniels told Eyewitness News he's not sure when the ferries will be ready for passengers.
I think we're talking weeks, it might be months. I'm not really sure, to be honest with you. I want to be transparent. We don't have a specific answer for that.
The RTA confirmed Bert Donis, the manager in charge of the ferry operation, was fired.
The change in management is also very encouraging. I think that may have been part of the problem.
We're going to be responsible for the public and make sure that when we do get these boats going, even though we're a little late, that is safe and that people feel really comfortable.
Metal Shark VP Josh Stickles told us a few outstanding items that remain are being addressed at this very moment. The marine surveyor is scheduled to inspect the work tomorrow and issue certification. At that point, the vessels will be cleared to enter service as soon as RTA is ready. And the ferries must also pass a final Coast Guard inspection here in New Orleans. At the Canal Street Ferry Landing in New Orleans, Paul Murphy, Eyewitness News.